Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hi, good to see you. Thanks for
Uh,
having me or, being together. I'm pretty excited about this.
yeah, we were talking earlier, and I was like, it's a tough day for me today, but it's okay. This is gonna help.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's okay. Hey, it's real life, It's like we're real people. I like to just pretend I'm just FaceTiming you, or just having a chat and
Yeah,
everybody can jump in and chat with us. So, yeah, it's
absolutely.
it's heavy stuff sometimes, right?
Yeah,
So, mm,
it is. It trauma is trauma, and yeah, I'm messing around with the profiles. I don't know if that's making a difference. Sorry, I'm still learning this stuff, and
it's all cool.
it's all trial and error, mostly error.
It's all good. I'm always playing around with stuff.
Are you? Okay, good.
So, hi everybody coming
Anyways,
in. Hello, hello. I see PTS Jeff and I see Dazed but Not Confused. My friend Doug there. We'll
oh,
be
Doug,
yeah,
awesome.
we'll be doing part 2 of my story tonight. He's been interviewing me and Doug, I got the wine ready and the tissues and
Mm,
my big glass about as big as my head. So
that's the way to go.
I'll be ready. Yeah, so let's talk. What did you
Yeah,
have in mind as far as there's so many different facets of what you went through and I went through, and I think we oddly have a lot in common, even though our cults were just so different.
yeah. It is like I've listened to you quite a bit, and I find myself going like this when you're talking. Yeah, I can relate to that. Yep, yep. It's crazy, and I mean, I was in Scientology for 25 years, and
Wow.
most of it was pretty. It wasn't, I didn't experience the physical abuse. I was in what's called a class 5 organization, so
Mhm.
that's not the organization, but I was working 7 days a week, and I was in the evening. I worked in the evening at the in the cult, but I also had like a full-time day job,
Oh,
so I would try and finish that off, and then I it was my own business. I did cleaning for a living, and then I would run down to the org for like 5 or 5:30 or something, unless I was on course. It was just weeks went by like a blur.
mm,
Um, but the whole cult aspect, the what do you call it? The whole indoctrination was a very slow process,
right.
and it, by the end it was, I mean, the suicidal, oops, I'm not supposed to say that shit. Oh well,
Don't worry about it.
done now, can't
It's all
turn back
good.
the page. The
It's fine.
ideations that I had were pretty strong, because I was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. I didn't want to be where I was,
Yeah.
and the other thing also was that they were trying to break up my marriage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's cult 101 to control your relationships, control your sex life, control,
Mhm.
yeah, your life in general. Now, I'm just curious,
Sex
what
life.
did
What
you
sex life, Marilyn?
right, exactly. I didn't either. I could barely hold hands with my husband until we got married, and then it was like, "Be fruitful and multiply," right? It's crazy, crazy, crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what did you think you were getting into when you joined staff, and what did
Oh.
you realize you had gotten yourself into?
Well, I mean, I wasn't a second generation, so I got in. It was sort of through my sister and brother-in-law. So my brother-in-law had a band member who was a Scientologist, and he introduced my brother-in-law and sister to Scientology. And then I was having some issues in a relationship, and they said, well, why don't you talk to, his name is Peter, and why don't you talk to him and see if, he can help? So he introduced me to Scientology. So the idea, getting into Scientology, the problem I was trying to solve was relationships. It's like, why,
Right.
what's going on? I want to understand relationships better. I don't want to get screwed over, that kind of thing. I want to know more about it. So then you do like a little public course. It's like, $60 or something like that. And you go there and you do your course and you go home, kind of thing. And then you slowly, more people come up to you, they start talking to you, they do some love bombing. Oh, I love your name, because I have kind of an unusual name, that's kind of stuff. And next thing you know, I'm joining staff because I'm promised that I can get this education
Right.
as an executive. And that was very appealing to me because I was, in my early 20s. I was like, what do I want to do with my life? I didn't really want to go to college. And anyways, so I ended up going to Los Angeles with the expectation that I was going to come back and I was going to be like this top-notch executive, and I can go and get a job in the real world and, and help out Scientology. So I wasn't like a Kool-Aid drinker from the very beginning. It was like, oh,
Right.
this is sort of like a stepping stone to move forward in life. And then in
Right. So
Los
it was like a
Angeles,
tool. You
yeah,
still had ambitions of your own, right? But you were that age, what, early 20s, right? That's what I
yeah,
was 20.
yeah,
And, many cults will go right into even college campuses and pluck people out.
yeah,
It's a, classic time in your life where you're not really living with your parents anymore. You kind of, cut the apron strings, but you haven't established a career, a family, a direction in life.
yeah.
And I very idealistic myself at that point. I wasn't as, probably you seemed pretty functional. I wasn't very functional. I was still
Well,
partying.
Well, you know what? It's funny you say that because I was quite the drinker and stuff. And when I got into Scientology, I completely stopped that. It was like cold turkey pretty much.
Mhm.
Because the funny thing was I had gotten into a car accident. I got into a head-on collision.
Ooh.
And yeah, I had given my keys over to my boyfriend who I thought was sober, and he wasn't, and he drove down the wrong side of the road. So, and then it was like, okay, so then you get introduced into more Scientology, more indoctrination. Well, here are the assists. This is what he says about alcohol. It was just like, it was like the perfect entrance into Scientology, into a cult. Shit happens in your life. There's the cult to basically save the day. That's
Mhm.
pretty much how it went.
So you got in a car accident, was that before you joined staff?
Yeah, it was before I joined staff.
So they did, like, the assist and everything, but did you have that feeling that you had pulled it in, or you didn't get that at the beginning?
And no, that
Okay.
wasn't, but
Interesting, yeah, right. They're
yeah,
not gonna
it
tell you
wasn't,
right off the gate, right out of the gate that you
no,
pulled it in, because then you'd probably
yeah,
be like, "That sucks, I'm outta here."
yeah. I probably would have said something else
Insidious.
because, yeah, I'm pretty mouthy.
Mhm,
But, but it's funny because I used to stand up for myself a lot. I have a very strong personality. And at one point, when now that I look back, that became very suppressed. I became very afraid to say
mhm.
anything for fear of getting in trouble.
Same
And
here, mhm.
it's so not me. I'm such yeah, I'm a real shit disturber kind of thing, right? I
So
can be.
interesting, because exactly how I was. I was very rebellious inside, but then
Yeah,
and they wanted, I don't know why they recruit people like us into these cults. I think maybe because, you seem like a passionate person. You seem like, you, can, really, like, go get something and be highly functional. And I think with me, I was, sort of used as a recruiter in a way, and unfortunately, I did recruit a few people. One is still there,
me too.
unfortunately. It's just,
That was
yeah,
my
it's
position.
devastating.
In the
Really?
end, that was my position, recruiter, and I was also the executive director. So, and there
Mm,
was very few people in there at the time, and so I pretty much did mostly everything in the organization. I had to keep the lights on. I had to like basically sell people Scientology in order to keep the lights on in the building.
mm. Funny
It's
how they wanna use your personality to draw other people to be, a spokesperson or whatever, and then they wanna break you down and take your freaking personality away, you know?
yeah,
I was Yeah, I was just a shell of a person. By the time I left, I was just a freaking mess, and
yeah,
I didn't even know, like, what my favorite color was because I couldn't have any preferences. I
yeah.
was like a zombie. I was like a zombie. It's
Yeah,
terrible.
like making a decision. And even still now, there's remnants of it.
Yeah,
Making a decision, it gives me anxiety. I get anxiety. It's
hear
like,
ya.
oh God, I hope I don't mess it up. It's so
Yeah.
stupid. I mean, when you sort of stand
Oh,
back from yourself and you go, why are you doing that? You know what you want, but there's still the little bits and pieces left in you where you go, is this the right decision? You're still
yeah.
second guessing yourself, right? It's so
Yeah, I
silly.
feel
But
like they programmed me to have self-doubt and all of it. I was just wondering how far did you get, like, on the bridge? Did you do a lot of actual, Scientology? Did you do the OT levels?
no, I got
No,
no, but my husband did.
really?
He got to
So
OT
he
five.
Oh, so that
Yeah,
was, like, so he was engrossed in, like, the body thing. You didn't you did you ever know about any of that?
he
No.
didn't. He would never say anything. But
Really?
you don't. Thanks, Doug. I know. Yeah. He because you sign these non-disclosure things, right? Statements, and it's like you'll get it's the fear factor, right? They put the
Yeah.
fear in you. You can't say anything to anybody, and plus you believe that if you tell your loved one the secrets of the OT levels, you're going to harm them. So why would you want to harm your partner or
Right.
whatever? So you don't say anything because you firmly believe everything you're doing is for the benefit of mankind. That's what's so nutty.
Mm.
You always think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. So what exactly did you feel that meant, like saving mankind or saving the planet? Like, I know it has to do with the reactive mind, but what does that do? It makes a good planet? Like, people are nice to each
Yeah.
other?
More, yeah. Well, they have the solutions to life, right? That's what you want to disseminate. You want people to have the technology so they can live a better life. They can use the ethics technology to straighten out their life, or they can use like Narcanon, for instance, to get off drugs, or they can do the bridge and they will become spiritually free. Like those are all beautiful things. Like who
If they
wouldn't want
worked,
that?
right? If they
Exactly.
actually worked, right?
If it
Yeah.
wasn't such a
Yeah.
scam and a bunch of BS. Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild because it was more like pie in the sky for us. It was like, yeah, you'd have peace on Earth to a degree, but this was a fallen planet, kind of like the prison planet, thing.
Yeah.
But it was because of, Adam ate the apple that Eve gave him because the serpent tempted her, and then we were all born bad. So
Mhm.
we needed a
Yeah.
savior. And I'm not picking on Christianity in general. I'm just saying if you take everything absolutely literally, it can drive you insane. If you take the fundamentalists take the Bible word for word for word. And there's so many contradictions that you can't really do that. And it really leaves it up to interpretation and this mystical. It's like I sometimes I get a little not jealous. I mean, that's a stupid word for it, but like at
Mhm.
least you guys had policies. Like we had
Yes.
whatever mood Marlene was in in the moment, you
Right.
never knew what end was up. It was just
Well,
crazy.
Well, Marilyn, it did become that way because there's
Did
so
it?
much policy that contradicts, your head spins. Like
Mm,
I studied some of the administrative technology, and Hubbard says this is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way you're supposed to build an organization. And I read the policy and then I look up and I go, well, how the frick am I going to do that? I have nobody to do it with. It's just me, you know
mhm.
so there was just so much contradiction, and you do your best to understand, but you're told that, hey, I got told I was illiterate, right? And I'm not illiterate. And you're told you have misunderstood words because you can't apply the technology, or you can't apply this policy to your position. It was just such a mind bending thing that you just, like, every time I walked out of that door, it was like you're dazed. There you go, Doug. You're
He's not
dazed,
confused.
but you are confused as
I'm
well.
watching the chat, but I can't click on
Like,
anything, so I'm just I am watching 'em. Yeah,
yeah,
it's just to keep you in a state of confusion, and if you don't get it, if you're not
exactly.
working it, if it's not working, it's because something is wrong with you. You're not working it because the technology, I think it's funny they even call it technology. Like, I'm
I
fascinated
mean,
with the word,
yeah,
that Scientology uses.
yeah,
We had our own screwed up, words that was like, it was like opposite day every day in my cult too. It was like
right.
something that seemed good meant something bad, something that sounded bad meant something good. I mean, it was nuts. And it's just almost designed to just keep you off kilter where you don't know what end is up, and you just end up obeying,
Yeah,
whatever, being
yeah,
compliant.
yeah. It breaks you down. It's a very slow process. Jeffrey Hawkins has a book. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but he breaks down basically how a cult breaks you down. And specifically, when he talks about Scientology, he talks about what are called the ethics conditions, or the ethics formulas. Again, there's the reference to a science, right? So it's supposed to be precise, it's supposed to be exact, but it's like, it takes you, it breaks you right down, and then it starts to build you up and sort of mold you into what you're supposed to be. It's so diabolical. Like, I
Yeah.
started reading the book, and yeah, that's right, Counterfeit Dreams. I
Oh,
had
right.
to I had to put it down because it disturbed me so
You
badly
you felt
because of,
triggered?
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
this is how it was done. This is exactly how it was done. I still haven't picked up the book. It's really triggering. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. Am I feeding back? I felt once in a while.
Oh,
Okay, good. Everybody, can you hear me okay? Um, yeah, I was that's kind of how I ended up in the ex-Scientologist Cultiverse universe here,
oh,
because it was very triggering for me to listen to ex-Christians because they still used a lot of the language. And there's one podcast which I really, really like. It's Derek Lambert, Myth Vision. I like it when he talks, but when he has apologists on or other theologians and they get talking, you know, I don't know what the
mhm,
equivalent of Scientology is, but yeah.
right.
And
Lingo.
I would just certain words, I'd be now I can kind of, it's fairly recent that I can actually recall scriptures. I have it all in my head. Like, I can pretty much tell you, all the
Wow.
books of the New Testament. I can bring up scriptures in my head without, freaking out and shaking. But yeah, I totally understand that. It's definitely a process, and I give you all a lot of credit to be able to kind of be almost immersed in it to help other people get out and other people to deprogram from it, you know.
That part of me never died to help people, and I'm surprised. I have a thing about donations, though. I don't do donations for anything. If somebody says, would you like to donate, that is like the biggest trigger for me. I am
Yeah.
not ever. It's so bad. I have donated to the
Okay.
aftermath, though, so
There you
but
go.
yeah, I mean, it's always giving. You're
Mhm.
always giving. If it's not your
Yes.
time, it's your money or your soul. That is, yeah, that was something that was pretty ingrained. Give, give, give. To take is
Mhm.
selfish. I mean, he also has like these scales. One of the scales is the scale of motivation, and the highest motivation that you can have is duty. So if you're motivated by duty, you're a high level sort of being. You're a big Thetan, in other words. So he has all sorts of these kind of things, and you're that's always thrown in your face. It's like, oh, what are
Yeah.
you, money motivated?
Yeah.
you know in the meantime, you're just trying to keep a roof over your head, right?
Yeah,
It's
totally, and you
crazy.
feel selfish if you don't. I mean, my kids and I, my husband were pretty much wearing, like, secondhand clothing from Goodwill, and
Yeah.
Marlene Sweeney, I like to say her name any chance I
Yes,
get
I
because
do.
she earned it,
Yes.
just like David Miscavige.
Yeah.
It's just my little way of being rebellious, like Marlene
Yeah.
Sweeney, she was dressed to the nines, I
Yeah.
mean, she did look like a school marm, kinda frumpy, but her clothes were nice and expensive, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And I will show pictures of her tonight, so
Oh, good. So we had something similar. Like I had my own little David Miscavige in my organization in Vancouver, and his name was Peter Byrne. And I love to say his name too, because like um, he was like I can't say mini version because he wasn't as small as Miscavige, but he was just nasty. He wasn't physical, but he was just a real sarcastic jerk. And a lot of people, he actually made people fear him. That's the he was I swear to God, he's a narcissist. But
Mm.
he would come in with beautiful suits, well coiffed, his nails were done, his office was the nicest of them all. Everybody would donate to fix up his office.
No, you're not
And
talking about Dave Miscavige. Who are you talking about?
exactly. I'm talking
Who
about Peter Byrne, the executive
Okay, Peter
director.
Byrne, okay.
You
Yep,
see,
gotcha.
you can like I can you can replace the name with David
Yeah,
Miscavige.
wow.
So it's like the cult sort of breeds these kind of narcissists. And when I look back, this is kind of scary, but I can see some narcissistic qualities that I had that developed over the years. And
Mhm.
it was almost like a survival thing because you couldn't survive, or you just, you would crumble.
Yeah.
So this guy, he was nasty. He was the guy that said that I was illiterate. And he was the guy that says, oh, you're cute, you don't have to worry about finding another guy. He like And I mean, my husband and I had been married for, like, I don't know, 20 years or something like that. It's like, who says that to people? That's so gross. But that's the kind of treatment you would get. It's like relationships and families were just like they were nothing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not fun.
It's a yeah, it's another way to not only isolate you, but also to get you to detach from this,
Yeah,
world. Anything that your emotions would be attached to, or anything that would take you away from the cause, you know?
yeah,
Totally what happened with me. It was, the words were different. It was more like, lay them on the altar. Your children are an idol. Your husband's an idol. You have ambition. You have hidden rebellion. It was like constant day and night, just, browbeating you spiritually
yeah.
and mentally and, in every way. I
Into
wasn't like
submission.
physically hit, but we,
Yeah,
food deprivation, sleep deprivation, anything like the only thing I had really was crochet when I actually lived there. If Marlene Sweeney, how I like to say her name and chance I get, if she knew if she knew how much I love to crochet, even though I was making like blankets and dishcloths and things that were utilitarian,
yeah,
now I think the reason why I make these goofy guys is because it's rebellious. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make something funny for just no reason except to just laugh, you know?
Yeah.
So
It feels good, doesn't it?
it
It
does.
really does. It like,
So
I mean, I've been out for like 10 years, but and it's along with my husband, but it's taken a long time to get
yeah.
to this point. But it's always been that rebellion in me to speak out, because the first thing I did when I found out the truth about Scientology, I tried to get my sister out,
Mm,
and that failed miserably because she ended up turning us in, and that's how we got declared.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, so she ratted on us basically.
Wow.
Yeah, so then she disconnected, and my sister was part of the cult as well. Like, she was hardcore. She disconnected from her kids. She like, in the end, like 3 years after I got out, she actually died. And
Oh,
so
I'm
I know
sorry.
the,
I'm
the
sorry.
circumstances were so bizarre, Marilyn. Here she is trying to be, the best Scientologist ever, and disconnect from all these SP connections, like her kids and her sister, and even her father, who was my father was never a Scientologist, but he was connected to us. And then 3 years later, she like dies of a massive heart attack.
Mm,
She was 366 pounds. She was
mm,
stressed to the max. And, when I was trying to get her out of the cult, she had super high blood pressure. She was basically ignoring doctor's orders to rest. So she went back to working at the org 6, 7 days a week. And she totally neglected herself. And then one day, boom. So, I never got to say anything else to her, but at least the last things I said to her was get out. So, and I guess she kind
yeah.
of did in a way. It's
Yeah.
so
I mean,
sad, you know?
you can't help but wonder, right? If this just the stress of the cult
I'm
and her
certain.
physical, yeah. I'm surprised to hear because I guess maybe it's the Sea Org, the ex-Sea Org people say that they didn't know any person that was like even remotely overweight. I guess because in the Sea Org they would pretty much starve them mostly.
Yeah.
But I can yeah I can imagine that just like could really do you in just the
Well, the
stress of it
illness
all.
you get from the stress, you know that, Marilyn,
Yep,
the incredible amount of stress you're under, both
totally.
externally and internally, it makes you very sick. I mean,
Hmm.
it was the main reason why I left, why I actually left staff, was because I had developed what was called hyperthyroid or Graves' disease. It's an autoimmune disease. I was so
Hmm.
sick I could barely walk, and they're still calling me, going, "Oh, you want to? Can you come in?" It's like, are you kidding me? It was crazy. And the funny thing is, I was watching Dancing with the Stars. This is while I'm sick, and Leah Remini happened to be on there,
Right.
and she's like chirping off the church, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, what a bitch! But at the same time, I'm kind of going, oh, that's really interesting. This what is it called? The cognitive dissonance.
Hmm. Yep.
And it really stuck with me. It's like, wow, this is a celebrity. No celebrity had ever spoken out like that. Like, so, well, I guess, uh, what was his name? Oh, Begay.
Jason Begay.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did, but he didn't do it publicly like Leah did.
Right.
She like it was, yeah, it was. She
Yeah, I
she
don't know
went
what
for
year. I remember watching a really long interview that he did with Mark Bunker, but that could have been later on. I'm not sure.
yeah,
It probably
but
was.
it wasn't
Mhm.
televised, was it?
No, it was probably well, I don't know if it was on the dark web. No, just kidding. I don't know if it was probably just on YouTube. So it was
Yeah,
yeah,
but
she was more out. Yeah. Well, Leah, troublemaker, right? I love her.
yeah, and
She just yeah.
that's the kind of personalities we need, and to
Mhm.
to speak out. People that just won't roll over anymore, because so many
Yeah.
people have, you know.
Yeah.
And I know I would have just walked away quietly.
Yeah.
You
Let me
know,
just
I
say,
wanted to.
Gabrielle, people are asking for your the link to your channel. I put it in the description. If you're on my channel, I put it in the description of this video on my channel. Gabrielle's is it Gabrielle or Gabrielle? Gabrielle?
Yeah, doesn't
Uh,
matter. Gabrielle is fine.
I put the link to her channel. You can go over there and subscribe and like and even hang out over there. And
Thank you.
Doug, if you're still with me, I know you tried to put up a link. I just clicked on your name and gave you powers so you can do the links if you want.
Oh, you have the power,
Well,
Doug.
he tried to put a link to your channel and I think it erased it
Oh,
because yeah, YouTube is like that. So Doug, if you're still with me,
Bella, LOL.
you can
That's
you
cute.
can put up all the links you want. I didn't actually line up a mod today, so I'm modless, but
Oh,
that's okay. We got a good group here. I'm not
well,
worried about it.
yeah, yeah. I think Jeff's here. I think I've made him a moderator
Okay,
if he wants to do, if there's anything
there he
necessary.
is. Oh, the link
Is he
doesn't
there?
work? Okay. Yeah, no pressure, Doug. You don't ever have to do it again, but I'm just saying since you're in the chat, if you wanna put it in there, you can. No pressure.
Seeing the link
I
doesn't work.
just have friends with wrenches. Wenches with wrenches. No, just kidding. Just friends with wrenches, that's all.
Winches with wrenches.
Wenches with wrenches.
Oh dear. Sorry. I thought that was pretty cute.
I'm sorry. I know, I'm just really
Oh,
goofy. I do take this shit seriously because I cry a lot about it because it
I
sucks,
know.
but I also it's like, you gotta laugh because it's just so ridiculous, and, it's like, I don't know, it's
Yeah.
how I
It's so messed up, you have to laugh, and I do my fair share of crying, on a regular basis, but if you have to be, it's part of the healing process, I think, is just
it is.
laughing about it.
Yeah, I do believe laughter is the best medicine.
Yeah.
Um, in the Bible, it says, "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth up the bones." Whatever
Oh
that
gee.
means. Dries up your bones. And I had a broken spirit from the
Yeah.
damn cult.
Yeah.
So,
How long
I'm a
has it
wench
been since you were out?
16 years. I was in, well, I had a semi-culty, well, I wouldn't even say semi, a little bit culty upbringing, but from the age 20 to 36, I was in a full-blown cult with the classic, charismatic leader that turns dark, pretty much narcissistic. It was a woman, but she actually followed a patriarchal set of doctrine, the IBLP, but the way she would rationalize it is she said that she was God had chosen her, even though she didn't want to be chosen. God had
Yeah.
chosen her because there were no men within like 100-mile radius that could lead the flock that God wanted her to lead. I mean, whatever. Yeah. And I
Oh
believed
wow.
it. I believed it. But yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
Doug put up your link and
oh, thank
thanks,
you,
Doug.
Doug.
And he said, "What are you saying? I'm a wench with a wrench."
Yes, you're our winch.
We love you, Doug.
Anyways, it I keep going back to the whole sort of analogy, not an analogy, but a comparison with like Miscavige and this guy that was the ED of the organization after me,
Mm,
and I worked under him, and it was very it was classic cult 101, where you walked on eggshells around him.
mm,
And then there was another woman who was actually responsible for bringing the Miscavige Scientology back to Vancouver. Her name is Shelley. Oh my God, did I just forget her name? Shelley. I'll think of it in a second. Hopefully, somebody
it's
who's
fine.
watching this.
Nobody
Anyway, so
nobody's gonna quiz you.
she went down to Flag early on when there was this whole sort of revamping that Miscavige did of the technology. And she studied down there for 7 years to be a case supervisor. So it's a very prestigious position. Hockett, thank you. Thank you, Lorna. Shelley Hockett.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And so she was down at Flag for many, many years. She left her family behind, and she had a young child and stuff like that. And then she finished her studies. And she apparently did a lot of interrogation of staff members, of Sea Org staff members. So I'd be very curious to find out if anybody was interrogated or sec checked by her. She was supposed to be a real, what they call a crackerjack sec checker, which means she dug in really hard. Isn't that
I'm
gross?
sorry. No, I'm just laughing because it just sounds like something like L or H would say. Like his terminology was so damn 50s, right? Like that's a
Exactly.
crackerjack. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like who uses that kind of language anymore? But you know, this is she was known in at Flag for her highly technical ability to audit, and she was 100% standard in, obviously, the David Miscavige way of auditing. So she comes back to Vancouver and she just turns everything upside down, and she brings in the Miscavige kind of mentality where, you know, people are getting more interrogations. It's much harsher. It was like the environment was much harsher. Ethics was very heavy. Like you get punished. Punishment was intense. And like, I'll give you an example. Like if somebody screwed up, they would be put into a condition of liability, and then nobody would talk to you until you actually got out of the condition. Like she would walk past, like one day she was your buddy. The next day you walk past her, because I worked on the same floor as her, you walk past her, she wouldn't even look at you. It was like, it was so gross.
So
Like,
what types of things would put you into the condition of liability? Like, and
okay,
who would deem you you know, unethical, whatever, in that
right, who would
condition?
actually assign you
Yeah.
the condition? Well, she had the authority to assign me the condition, even
Okay.
though she was lower on the in the organization than I was. And
Really?
I was actually in charge of all the ethics and justice. So this is what I mean. This is the kind of shit that would happen, right? So
How did that happen?
because she had that kind of authority. So she also she was also the big narc as well. She would report to Flag. Basically, stuff that was going on in our organization would go directly to Flag. Like, and that's not the way it's supposed to work. There's supposed to be, you know, certain positions that would get the information, right? It was like you sort of follow the ladder, the corporate ladder, but she didn't, and she didn't have to. That's how Miscavige actually changed stuff. So he would get like reports every week on exactly what was happening with who. You know, if anybody had gone on the internet and looked at any sort of Xenu thing, or if there was any sort of trouble, you know, with, like, I know the anonymous guys, they were protesting in front of our organization for probably a year on and off. So she would report all that, and I would see this stuff, right? So anyways, the type of things you would get in trouble for was, for instance, I was supposed to arrange transportation for one of the guys, for one of the staff members that was supposed to fly to Florida for training. And I arranged his ride to pick him up. He slept in and he missed his ride. I got in shit for that. Yeah, I got put into what's called a liability condition. So now I'm a liability. I'm like an enemy to the group. I can't be trusted. So I had to make up the damage and pay for another flight out of my own pocket.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's so
No.
stupid.
So when that was happening, what was going through your mind? Were you like, "This is bullshit. I hate this place," or "This isn't right"? Or were you like, "I deserve this. Oh god, I shouldn't have let him do that," or whatever? Did you blame yourself, or was it
Oh, yeah.
like both? So you
Well, yeah, it was both. The part of me went, well, why the hell didn't he actually get up, little
right,
jerk?
right.
But I can't say that because you're responsible for everything. It was my responsibility to make sure that he was there. Like I could have given him a wake up call, or, there's all these things that I could have done so he would have made it.
Now, did he
You
get in
know,
trouble? Like, did he get in worse
yeah, a
trouble
little
than
bit.
you?
A
Yeah,
little bit, but then, he was on the plane the next day and gone. So I was
right.
there left holding the bag, right?
Mhm.
So I'll never forget that one. That one really pissed me off. It was just like, seriously, dude, like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? Can't you get up in the morning? And I mean, it was kind of
Mm.
early. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning that he had to, his ride was there.
Yeah.
Anyways, like, and then why couldn't she go in and get him?
Yeah.
It was just like, it
Now,
was so stupid.
not to jump ahead too much, but I'm just curious
Go
because
ahead.
it kinda leads into another question I had is, did when you started to when the house of cards started to come down and you started wanting out, was it because of things like this, all this, like, bullshit, bad
Yes.
treatment,
Yes.
hypocrisy, all that, or
Yes.
was it the actual tech or doctrine or whatever that you thought was bogus? So it
No.
was the treatment, it was the way. Okay.
Yeah. It
That's
was
pretty
the
much
way
how
it
it
was
was with me too.
exactly. So
Mhm.
it was the way I was being handled. It was the way it was incorrectly being applied to me.
Right.
It was too harsh. This wasn't LRH. This isn't how he intended the tech to be. That's what was going through my mind.
Right.
And what never crossed my mind, Marilyn, is to leave, is to actually leave the cult. That never even crossed my mind.
Wow.
It was just like, this is a really shitty place to be. I don't want to be on staff. But,
Right, but you still believed that in the tech and you still believed
yeah,
it all
a
that.
hundred
Yeah.
percent.
Mhm.
Isn't that
Yeah,
crazy?
when I left, it was the same way. It was like, you know, she was casting out demons out of my daughter and doing all kinds of shit, and then it was like the straw that broke the camel's back was pretty much something small. It was about paint colors, you know? Because she kept having my
That's
husband
all
go
it
up and
takes.
change the shade of paint on her damn house that he helped to buy,
Oh
and
gosh.
it was just like, "I've had it. This isn't
Yeah,
Christian. This isn't right," but I still didn't completely abandon, which I still haven't 100%. I still believe there's probably something out there. I just, for a while just put it all aside, but we did join another church and same thing. It was, not it wasn't culty like that, but the minister, ended up being a total hypocrite. And I was like, I am done with organized religion. And I was
yeah,
just like, okay, then I started to really have a crisis of faith and not really believing in any of it, for a while.
yeah.
So,
And that's the hard part, because everything that you've built your life on,
yeah.
that foundation, that belief,
Hmm.
when that crumbles, that really messes you up. You have
Yeah.
nothing to grab onto anymore. And I mean, I think I still struggle with that. It's, I look at stuff and I go, I don't know if I believe that. Like, I don't have anything to base it on. Like Scientology, it, and this is going to sound funny, but there's an aspect to it that was very, not comforting, but stabilizing,
Hmm.
because it had the answers for everything. Anything
Certainty,
in
right?
life,
Like,
it
so
was that certainty. Yeah,
confident and that's what Marlene Sweeney, I like to say her name. She was like, I know that I know that I know.
you're right.
That's what she always said, and she was just so confident, and that's why she was in some ways so uncharismatic. I mean,
Yeah,
she was from Long Island, she talked like this, and she was just nothing to really look at or anything, but
yeah,
she was nothing against Long Islanders, but
yeah,
she
yeah.
would just really lay it on because she was like one of those really kind of hard hitting go getters. And she would just lay it on thick. And I was like, well, like she knows that she knows that she knows, and I don't know. So, okay, I'll go
Yeah.
along with it, you know, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that certainty, it's almost like a security thing. It's like you have that whatever it is, and life it seems easier to operate in life when you have that kind of certainty. I'd make
Mhm.
a decision. I made snap decisions, and usually they turn out well, but you sort of believed in yourself. You had that. And then I left, and I still believed in the technology, so much so that I sought out what's called it's the independent field. I sought out Scientology outside the corporate church kind of thing. And
Do they
I
call
got
that squirreling? Squirrel?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the Scientology would call it squirreling, but the interesting part of it is that the Scientology that were using was Scientology prior to what David Miscavige did with it. So they were like using the pure version of the technology.
Right.
And they the whole ethics aspect of it was sort of, it wasn't near, it wasn't harsh or anything like that, right? So and the person we went to see was a former Vancouver staff member who was very much liked, and he was declared by this Shelley Hawkett woman who had
Really?
come back from Flag. So, I mean, that's a whole story in itself. Like, he wrote this huge letter um, publicly and sent it out to a lot of people, because he was friends with a lot of people. So he sent it out on Facebook or something like that. And he was pointing out all the issues that were wrong about Vancouver and the people who are running it. So, I mean, that's basically an automatic declare, right?
Declare,
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, you can't do stuff like that. But him and his wife, and he passed away sadly. But they're still really nice people. They
Yeah.
just have this idea that they won't look at anything negative about the technology. They disagree with David Miscavige and all that stuff, but they still believe in L. Ron Hubbard's technology.
Right. So how did
And
you Doug wants to know how you broke out of the indie Scientology scene as well.
oh,
You can click
well,
on his question, I think, if you want to.
I can't.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's your
oh wow,
channel. Yeah,
holy moly!
there
So
he is.
business would be curious to know how do we make this go lower?
I think you have it.
Is that better?
Um, yeah, that works. Yeah.
Okay. Whatever works. So they lived further away from us, so it was kind of like a vacation that we took. And I did it was some auditing, right? It wasn't like a lot of auditing. It was very different. But it was more like talking with a friend, and it was a lot lighter. It wasn't as heavy. It wasn't interrogation. It was more like a therapy session where you're just talking with a therapist, but you're holding the cans. So it wasn't foreign to me. But then
Mhm.
I finished that and I got home, and I just kept looking. I just kept looking at information. I was listening to Chris Shelton and John Atack, and they were doing like deep dives on the technology and deep dives on L. Ron Hubbard, him personally. And
Right.
and then I also read Steve Hassan's that Combating Mind Control.
Yeah, lifesaver, that book. Yeah.
Yeah, and just listening to other things. And it sort of just started to unwind itself, and it's like, okay, this technology is really messing me up. I can see how it had sort of locked me into this cult. And it was like peeling the onion, right?
Mhm.
You sort of get to one level, and then you peel a little more, and you see a little more. And then at one point it was just like, this is complete bullshit. And plus the gains that you have are very temporary. They don't
Yeah.
last. And my husband was the same way, and he was OT5.
Wow.
And I started to see that he wasn't the OT. He sort of went, yeah, I don't have these perceptions. It was like he was unraveling with me. It was very
Right.
interesting. Because I mean, that's all we did, because we're in Canada. We don't have like a whole bunch of people that we could really talk to sort of compare notes with, right? Because
Mm.
Scientology is small in Canada. But yeah, you start watching the YouTube stuff, and then at one point I started to reach out to other people who had left, like completely. And that was a real eye opener. People like starting to tell me their stories, and um, how they got out and what kind of research they did and how they felt about the tech. And at one point, I actually had a little bit of an SP gathering. We had
Really?
all the
Ooh,
local SPs in Vancouver. We all got together. I
you're a
organized it,
rebel.
right? It was great. People,
That's
I mean,
great.
they reminisced about being in the cult, and
Mhm.
what their experiences were. And I had no idea how badly people were treated. Everybody had their horror story about what happened. Like I know a guy, he went down for training to flag, and it was like complete deprivation. It was starvation. He had nothing. He came back like skinny as a rail, and I didn't know about that.
Mm.
Like, it hit home that this has happened to people I know. So, and they weren't in the Sea Org.
Mm.
So it's like when you hear enough of this, and people are sort of, their stories are very similar, it really starts to shake your universe, and you go, yeah, this is bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you had people to talk to about it. Um, and
Yeah,
and this was something that we had in common, you and I, is which is very rare, right? Because that's what you said that was it Yanya Lalich told you that it's very rare for married couples to escape a cult and then stay married. You
yeah,
know?
very rare.
Yeah,
And because because you get married in the cult, everything that you've based your marriage on, for the most part, is all surrounded around the cult. Your friends, your family
absolutely.
members, you know
Yep.
um it's your world, it's your universe. So you leave, and then you kind of go, well, what now? I didn't have a career. I mean, fortunately, my husband, he did keep his job. He was a city bus driver, and he used to drive by the org all the time. Just as a side note, and he'd point out to people, that's the Church of Scientology, don't go there.
Oh, good. It's your tour.
Yeah,
I love it.
he was very open about it. But so we kind of had to reestablish our relationship, and
Yeah.
because I mean, he was in for 40 years. Like, that's a long time. That's a
Yeah.
long time to be in a cult. So you're unwinding. We still unwind stuff, and we're like, oh, is that like one of your cult ideas? It comes up all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah,
you
that's
had that
wild.
happen.
Um, Oh, definitely. I mean, we were sort of like, because we had to get permission. We were sort of like the Sea Org in like a tiny, tiny example of a Sea Org because we lived in, at the cult like a commune for 5.5 years. My
Wow.
husband and I both had. We were, I was 20, but I had already I ran away from the foster home at 16, or from my adopted home at 16. Ended up in foster care again until I aged out of the system, and just took off to Cape Cod and just went wild for a couple of years. Then I was afraid that I was really going to hell. So I came back, and that's when I joined the cult when I was 20. And Duncan, my husband, was just very idealistic. He was brought up in like kind of upper middle class. Like his family was, his mom was like homemaker, although she was a rebel too. And
That's funny.
his dad, uncles, cousins all became engineers, and he just kind of rebelled. Like he didn't want to be an engineer. He went to school. He ended up with a marketing degree and just took off to
Wow.
Vermont and joined a cult. But we had both kind of had lived a little bit, so we knew
Yeah.
anatomy, where everything went. But we were celibate for 5.5 years, and
Wow.
we got permission to get married. So when we escaped the cult, here I am with 3 kids, right? They're 5, 7, and 9. And I didn't even know if, like, I don't know, I went through this crisis. Like, I know I like him, he's my friend, but was this an
Yeah.
arranged marriage? Do we have anything else in common if we don't
Yeah.
have the cult mindset?
Yeah.
And I found out, luckily we do, but we've been through a lot. We've had times where we've felt like, is this what's reality? Or, we had kind of grown together, and we deprogrammed a lot together, but he has some ideas that about origin things that I'm like, I don't know about that,
Yeah.
like near death experiences and stuff. I'm like, he's
Yeah.
really into like listening to people's stories. I'm like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to hear it.
Totally. I
So
totally understand.
we have our own journey, but we also had it together too. So that was good because he sometimes nobody understood what fucking language I was. Oh, sorry, I said what language I was even speaking. Because I'll give you an example. I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. So yesterday I was talking to Kelly and Doug, right? And we were talking about like our little drinking thing about like they came up with the word partake, and I was like, how about imbibe? And they're like, what the hell's that?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
they said it very nicely, but they're like, I've never heard of that. And I was like, I
I have.
realized
Yeah.
later on that night, I was like, that's a Bible word.
Is it really?
Yeah, well, you know what imbibe
I've
is?
heard it
Okay, you
before.
do.
Yeah.
All right, you've heard it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess most people haven't, because I've asked around and nobody has, except for those that I know that have some type of like either Catholic or Pentecostal Christian background, because it is used in the Bible. So
Yeah. Well, and I'll
so
tell
it's
you
just
why
funny
I
because
know
I
that.
was like an alien.
Yeah. But yeah, well, we clear a lot of words in Scientology, so you get to know like really stupid words that it's like, really? Anyways, yeah, you clear a lot of words like in the dictionary. Every single definition you're supposed to know. It's yeah,
Mhm.
it's annoying. As a matter of fact, I don't like to read books anymore because it was so enforced, which is
Yeah, me
crappy.
too.
I listen
I
to
like to
audio
listen.
books.
Yeah, me too. I'll listen to books.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but just on the whole relationship thing, it's like you're sort of like one person when you're in a cult because
Yeah,
you have everything is the same. You're supposed to think the same. It's very like robotic, and then
absolutely. Yeah.
you come apart and you heal and you go on your different journeys because everybody is different. Like he he doesn't have as like his experience in Scientology wasn't as harsh as mine was because he got in at the very like early 80s where it wasn't as messed up, right? And then I got in like 89 where Miscavige had already taken over Scientology. So it got
Right.
really like nuts. um and then he also some of the auditing that he did because he was very shy, he was a very introverted person, So doing like the communication courses, he found actually helped him come out of his shell a little more. So he had benefits from it. But then when he saw how people were being mistreated and started to learn more about the abuses and all the money grabbing and that kind of stuff, then he was kind of like, okay, this isn't cool.
Right.
And he got into the independent field as well, but there was expectations there as well. Like, for instance, when you go into on the upper levels, like the OT levels, you're having, like OT7 in particular, you're having to audit constantly, and
Audit
and it
yourself, right?
audit yourself,
Audit
solo
yourself.
audit.
Interesting.
So, and it's the same in the independent field at in their OT levels. So, and he's driving, he has a full-time job. So it was just like, I'm not willing to give up my job to do this. So that's sort of where, he was like, okay, this isn't going to happen. I'm not doing
Yeah.
this. I mean, it wasn't as much money. The services are definitely like way cheaper. And so, but it was the time consuming. And then he was like, this isn't really working. Like, he didn't feel any different about it. And it just, you get a feeling, and that's how
Mhm.
we explained it. He was just like, it wasn't for him, even in the independent field. So,
Yeah.
so then just sort of back to the whole relationship. So, like, his experience and my experience were very different. So we're unraveling things at a different time. I did way more deep dive into stuff than he did. And so, we sort of looked at each other, and we were like, well, who are we, right? So you have to, like, reestablish your relationship and sort of shed all the false information. Like, we got marriage counseling in LA, and that was weird. Like, you have all these ideas about what a relationship is when you're in a cult, and it's not true.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
false. It's false beliefs. So, it's hard to shed that, because I mean, we've been married now. We just had our 25-year anniversary, and yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it other than it's a challenge. And it's really hard, because not only are you working on yourself and trying to recover and figure things out, but you have this other element of your of a husband who's going through his own journey, his
Right.
own healing, and his own recovery. And then he goes and gets cancer. Like, oh, that really put a wrench into things, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Because now you're dealing with, like in Scientology, you're immortal spiritual being, you live on. And now you're out. He gets cancer. He got pancreatic cancer, and now you're looking at the real world, and you're actually looking at the fact that you could very possibly die from cancer, because
Yeah.
your concept of life and death and everything in Scientology is so different. And when you start to just like peel all that away, and you're confronted with this whole cancer thing, that, pancreatic cancer has a very low survival rate.
Yeah,
So,
that's amazing that he's okay. Oh my god. So glad.
like, this guy is a survivor. He actually got
Yeah.
hit by lightning when he was 9 years old.
Oh my
And
god.
I have to get him on one of these
Yeah.
days.
Oh my god. I know. My viewer's like Duncan better. He's like really
Okay.
smart. He looks like a professor. Yeah. He's like
Yeah. Chuck's
he doesn't
Chuck's a real
cry.
sweet boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a sweetie. He's a very gentle soul. I'm a little more rambunctious,
Me too.
rebellious. Yeah.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Anyway, so how did you find, I mean, are you guys are in an okay place now, obviously. It's been 16 years. But
Yeah.
did you have to like unravel all these weird beliefs about a relationship and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of, multifaceted because, we
Exactly.
we weren't really we weren't even really following the doctrine that we were, under because it was a very patriarchal thing, and like I said, my husband's you know, my mother-in-law, his mother, they called her Bing, and Bing is a good name for her because she was a homemaker, she was married to an engineer, but she had graduated from RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. She was an artist
Oh,
and a she's an
oh,
artist and a poet and a free spirit, and,
yeah,
she, like, belonged to, health food co-ops, and she was a hippie, and she's just not nonconformist, and they were
awesome.
Methodists. Yeah, they went to a Methodist church, but, she was always very progressive, very open to LGBTQ rights and everything. So he was raised by a liberal woman, and he always respected women, and that's probably why he didn't mind joining a quote church that had a woman pastor.
Right,
So he never, when it was kind of laid down the law that he was supposed to be the master of his the king of his castle and all that. It
yeah,
was kind of a joke because I would not be when we got married. Actually, I wish I could somehow play this for you guys. It was like when they have these like wedding vows, and it was like I will honor and obey and submit myself to you. I like I stuttered over the words and we all started laughing because I couldn't say the word submit.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, we just kinda I think we just went through the motions and kind of, like, tried to make it just enough where we wouldn't get, quote, "sent to ethics," was
wow,
our equivalent was we'd be sent before the board, and I went
right,
before the board all the time, and they would literally lay their hands on you, you think of, like, "Don't lay your hands on me," like, you lay hands on someone is violent. It was, like, a violence that was more of a mental, emotional, spiritual violence. They would lay hands on you, and it was like this weird mystical. It was a combination of fundamentalism, the IBLP, which was like Bill Gothard, like with the Duggars follow.
yeah,
It was a
yeah,
mixture of that and the mystical, charismatic Pentecostal movement. So they would start like stuttering in tongues, blah, 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 just babbling. They would come up with these words from God, and Marlene Sweeney, her name, would look at like an older lady and
yeah,
say, um, she'd open one eye and she'd be like, so and so, I believe God told me you have a word for Marilyn. And she'd be like, I got to come up with a
mm,
word. I got to come up with a word. So she'd be like, the smoke coming out of her
oh,
ears. And she'd pronounce something like Achan, which was this terrible story from the Bible about this guy who hid idols under his tent and was
oh
brutally
no,
unalived with his whole family. You know, so I was shaking in my boots, right? I was like,
yeah,
"Oh my god, I've got a spirit of Achan. I gotta repent. I'm so sorry." I had no idea, like, what it was all weird, mystical shit. It was like, "You've been pronounced as bad," and I would just have to confess, like, I just wanted to get out of there, kinda like with, being
yeah,
audited or whatever, when you're being
yeah, you say
interrogated,
anything.
just want to get out of there.
Yeah,
And I would mistake, the relief I felt with getting out of that freaking room with God having favor on me. I'm like,
yeah,
"Oh, thank God." And I swear this is just a maybe, something that I a theory of mine, and I know a lot of people believe the same, is that it could be, like a spiritual experience,
mhm,
but it could also be the chemicals in your brain, like
right,
dopamine, all
yeah,
of them, like
endorphins, yeah,
yeah, your endorphins,
yeah,
right? So, those all of those really, like, experiences I had, like, that must be God,
yeah,
or, "Oh, you feel so loved," or you feel this being. It could be
yes,
the
yes,
chemicals in your brain telling you.
yes,
I don't know.
yes.
I'm not
totally relate to that.
saying there's nothing out there. There could very well be. I think there is something, but for, just because we're so complex but
Yeah.
because we're so complex, the brain is it's just amazing,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny you say you mentioned that. I was thinking about this the other night, and I wanted to mention it. But when you're getting auditing, you get, like, they call it a release, right? But
Mhm.
something occurs where you feel some weight lifted off of you because you're talking about a problem or something like that. And after I left the cult, I became very close to my father, and he had suffered a massive heart attack, um, a number of years prior to that. So um, he, like, he didn't have oxygen to his brain for like 3 minutes.
Oh.
So there was some neurological damage there, right? And then he had a heart condition, he had COPD, and like I knew he was starting to get older. So we had this incredible relationship for like 3 years before he passed on. And after he passed, uh, sorry, it's still pretty raw. Um,
Okay, take your time. Hey,
yeah.
listen, I get it, right? I get it. We're all here holding
And the
space.
whole,
It's okay.
yeah, the whole time, like when he passed away, my sister was so disconnected. She wouldn't even come see him in the hospital. Like Marilyn, literally, he was taking his last breaths. I was texting my sister saying, please come see your father, say goodbye, blah, 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 right? And it never happened. She never answered, nothing. But so he passes on, and I went into this like major grief mode, and I was like bawling almost every day. I couldn't function. It was so bad. And it wasn't just because of my father passing. I know it wasn't just because of that, but it was the entire circumstance surrounding it. It was so traumatic. I'd lost my mom, like, um, just I guess 2 or 3 years after I got into Scientology. I lost my mom to
Mhm.
cancer. And anyway, so there's been like a number of losses in my family. So with dad passing away, it was just and then leaving the cult and all that other kind of crap. It was like I broke, and I I ended up going to see a grief counselor, and and I tell you, it took every bit of me to go and do this because of the programming that you get in
That's
Scientology.
that's a no-no. You can't even just go to a regular counselor, right?
No,
Wow.
no, no. But like I was like, I can't do this. I can't deal with this myself. You're trying to read, you're trying to sort it all out, you're trying to sort of, get your shit together more or less, right? And I'm
Right.
and at the same time, we're in a lot of debt because we donated so much money to the church. And so I'm working 6 days a week, even though I'm out, even though I'm not in a cult, but you have to make up this lost time. So I ended up finding a grief counselor, and it was amazing. Like, uh, I had felt like sort of like these spiritual releases, or whatever you want to call them, in Scientology. But when I went to this person, and I think it was more or less just talk therapy, but I wish I knew exactly what it was, but she was asking me to feel in my body where the pain was, because my body was like, I was like wrapped, I was like a top, so
Mm.
tightly wound up like a spring, and everything hurt. Like my shoulders hurt, because it's
Mhm.
where it's how I process trauma.
Yeah.
I hold it all nice and tight in my body. So she started doing this. this process with me, and it was just like I resisted, because it's like, oh, this is, what did LRH used to call them, quacks, that all these.
Another 50s term.
Exactly.
Cracker Jack. He was a quack and a Cracker Jack.
So this lady, she was super quirky. Her hair was dyed and stuff, and it was like all these things that would be rolling in the back of my mind, going, she's a quack, blah blah blah. And then we started to get into it, but like, you try your best to try and deprogram yourself. I'm like, okay, just go with this, do this, see if you can get something out of it, right? It's like you're sort of forcing yourself to deprogram, and trying to shed those false beliefs. So the first session was like, okay, I sort of calmed down. I wasn't like all hyper and crying anymore. And then in the third session, we kept doing this process, and I felt something lift. And I started to, of course, equate it with Scientology, and I'm like, no, this is different. This is really, really different. This actually works. It's like I felt like enormous relief, and it was okay. It was okay to be in her office. It was okay to get this help from somebody. It was okay for it not to be Scientology processing. And and I knew I was gonna, my eternity wasn't being taken away from me either.
Yeah,
So
did you feel like it was for your benefit without getting something out of you? Because that's how I felt too when I started going to a counselor after the call, because I had, quote, Christian counseling. Marlene basically would tell you what was wrong with you. She would create the problem and then give the solution, right? So, and like, nobody needed to even listen to what you had to say, because unless it was parroting what they were thinking, they didn't want to hear it, right? So to have a counselor that would actually listen to you and not even tell you what to do, help you find the answer within yourself or within your own observations, and then not, well, yeah, I mean, you got to pay, but you're not having to like repent or do all this interrogation shit or
exactly.
these lower
Yeah,
conditions, and just beating yourself over the head and all that. And it's real, it's like real relief, instead of that you know chemical in your brain where it's like, okay, you're off the hook right now, but until the next time, and you have to
right,
keep coming back. But I
right.
just want to say, Doug said, thank you for sharing this, Gabrielle. My mom just
Oh.
started seeing a grief counselor. That's amazing.
It's huge. Oh,
That's a
Doug, you made me
huge
cry, because his
that's a
mom was.
big step.
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
hearing
really,
that.
really hard just to make that phone call and ask for that kind of help.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
hope the
and
best
there
for
was.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no consequences. You don't, if you
Yeah.
say, like, here's a perfect example. You go into session in Scientology, and you say, well, as this is as an overt or as a transgression, I watch TV. I watch TV. I had the TV going on in the background. And next thing you know, you're in ethics dealing with this knowledge report because you had the frickin' TV on. Like that I tell you, that was a stupid thing like that really stuck in my head. It's like, this is not cool. Once again, it's just like, it's the shelf was getting heavier and heavier with all these, you
Right.
know, disagreements and
Right.
things that you
Yeah.
knew weren't okay.
And
But
now that
yeah,
you know about the bite model, it's classic. But back then, like the same with me, I'd be like, I'd feel guilty, or I'd feel like I had to sneak around, and then I'd be policing myself. And then finally, when I realized that I was going to get in trouble no matter what I did, we just started
exactly.
sneaking, like, you know, G and PG movies, nothing really crazy, but and little glasses of wine at night, and let our kids take music lessons behind their back. Glad I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like, I just give up. I can't do this anymore, you know?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I would not dare to do that. That's how programmed I was. That's how,
Mm,
and the other aspect of it too was because I was what's called an ethics officer. I was actually using ethics on other people, disciplining other people with it. It's like I had to set the example. So it was a double-edged sword. Like I had to
right.
be like the perfect Scientologist. It's like nobody knew about the relationship stuff where people were my I call them we called them seniors in Scientology, which means the people who are
Over
above
you.
you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like nobody else knew about them trying to break our relationship up and stuff like that. Nobody really knows, unless of course you do a liability condition, and then you have to go and get people to sign off, basically approving that you're allowed back into the group. Like, that's gross.
Yeah.
That,
Well, that's another humiliation tactic, like, same thing with me. It was like you were stripped
exactly.
of any type of, and we would have to be isolated. I remember, just being, like, demoted and then having you do, I mean, we didn't have anything official. It was more like whatever Marlene told you, but it was very similar. It was like,
Yeah.
I would have to, like, wash toilets with my bare hands, um, crawl on the floor, my hands
Mhm.
and knees, and, do, like, just weird, stupid, arbitrary stuff. And
Yeah.
you weren't allowed to speak in church. You would have to, basically like be shunned in your own living quarters.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was
That's
called all
crazy.
kinds of names. I was always called a Jezebel. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
and then my daughter at 7 years old was called a Jezebel. And then I was like, you know what? This isn't okay. 7 years
Not
old,
cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was like, we would have staff meeting once a week. And at the time, we had about 40 to 45 people on staff in the evening, on the evening crew, I guess you want to call it. We called it a foundation. And so if anybody was downstat or didn't produce more than they did the previous week, they would, everybody would have to show their statistic, which was a graph. So either your
Mhm.
graph is going down, it's straight, which would be an emergency, or it's going down. So one of my statistics was recruitment. And since people don't really want to join Scientology, trying to recruit people was very, very difficult. So that thing would stay level all the time. So nothing would happen. And I would get reprimanded in front of everybody almost every week. And I would have this ED, Peter Byrne. I like to mention his
Peter
name.
Byrne, any
Peter
chance you get?
Byrne.
We got to make an overlay. Yeah, we got to make an overlay, a drink,
Oh, this
Peter
feels
Byrne.
so good. You have no idea. So I would sit right beside him.
Burn.
Burn. Yeah, gonna burn Peter Byrne. So I had to sit right beside him, and he's basically looking down on me. I'm sitting in the chair. I tell you, in the end, to keep myself from jumping up and punching him, I would hold on to the chair, underneath the chair, and keep as still as I possibly could, and just stare straight forward, because I would get so upset. And you're holding in all that anger. But he would do this to almost everybody that, but it was me in particular that he liked to pick on. And I don't know why. But it was so humiliating. I It was like I would so try not. It was Thursday nights. Like, I still remember the exact day. Thursday nights. It was after
After
2 on
2.
Thursday, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
right.
Well, my 2 o'clock would end on Wednesday night, because we weren't in on Thursday at 2 o'clock, but it was Thursday nights. And yeah, it was just like, it was complete and utter dread every single week, as when I would print off my statistics for the week. It was just like, it was traumatizing. That's the best way to describe it. Every
Yeah.
single week he would do shit like this,
Yeah.
and I would always hope it was somebody else. You know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
horrible, right?
Yeah.
Because I like sitting there watching somebody else just get raked over the coals and degraded and stuff like that, was, to me, was horrible. And I had a brother-in-law who was also in, and he would get berated by him all the time. It was just so horrible.
Mm.
Anyways,
Yeah, that kind of personality. I mean, it I feel like Marlene always wanted to snuff out any light or life, and
yeah,
she, I mean, I'll talk about it tonight. I got pictures that kind of tell the story. I've been talking to
yeah,
Doug about it, and you can see, you know, me decreasing not only physically, but just
really,
my eyes, my look, yeah, my hair, everything was getting darker, literally darker and
yeah,
darker and darker as she was just getting larger than life, and just more and more controlling. And she just wanted to snuff out that last little bit. And I just held on to it. I wasn't gonna fucking let
good
her,
for you.
and
Good for
I don't
you.
think I would have survived, and maybe Peter Byrne, because we like to say we like to
Yes.
burn his ass any chance we get around here.
Oh,
Um,
Marilyn, I love it.
he was such a dick that he
Yes.
probably saw that life in you and didn't want it to just he was probably jealous of you or something, like, he
Yeah,
just,
something. I
yeah,
don't know what it was,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, he was just one nasty, nasty piece of work. And like I said, he was basically my David Miscavige.
mhm,
That's the best way I can describe him. He was like a Miscavige wannabe, and he idolized Miscavige. Oh my God. Like this, that, like I remember him talking about meeting Miscavige and what a wonderful man he was. And the first time I saw Miscavige, when I was in Celebrity Center in LA, he walked through, like, I was very new to Scientology. This is just a quick story. He walked through this doorway, and they were announcing somebody who had just gone clear. And he walks through this doorway he was like sort of across the room from me. It was a very big room. And I looked over at whoever, I can't even remember who it was that was beside me. And I went, "Who's the short guy?" And this is like David Miscavige. Like, I had no idea who this dude was, right? And the guy looks at me and he says,
that's
"That's COB." And I was like, I didn't say anything because but just by the reaction from this person, I knew I had
yeah,
said something stupid. So I remember thinking this. I went, "Cobb? What a strange name." Because I wasn't familiar with all the stupid
who's the
abbreviations.
short
I
guy,
literally
cob,
thought
corn
to
on the
myself,
cob?
what does Cobb mean? I had an MU. I had a misunderstood word.
I guess so.
Oh God.
It's not even a
Anyway.
word, that's one of those stupid, like, acronym phrases. Oh
Acronyms,
my god.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh, there's tons of them in
It's
Scientology.
just
It's
wild how, like,
mind-bending.
when people tell, like, what they were in Scientology, it's like, I mean, they, like, swept the floor or something, but they were like, "The IC of the COP of the XYZ PDQ." I'm like, "I don't know what that means, but you
Oh
just
gosh.
killed potatoes, right?"
Yeah,
Like, but they
yeah.
would puff you up. It was like being in the military, right? They would just give you all these stripes, and I could see how that would appeal. That totally would appeal to me. I mean, I had more of a you have a calling, God's gonna really use you. And like
Mhm.
now it's like when say somebody said they're gonna use me, I'm like, fuck no, you ain't gonna use me. But back then it was like God's gonna use you, and it was supposedly a good thing.
Privilege. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, I
yeah.
mean, when you're the executive director of the Church of Scientology of British Columbia, like, that's like, woo,
Yeah.
you know? That was a whole other story in itself. I'm not gonna get into that one. That was a nightmare.
Yeah, so we can, wind down. I could talk to you all day, but I
I
gotta
know, this is
I got so
horrible.
much
I
to
mean, it's
do, and then
fun.
tonight,
Yeah,
yeah, I got another whole stream tonight, and I'm gonna
yeah,
be, like, burning the midnight oil. I'm gonna take a nap, guys,
good for
because
you.
I don't
Yeah,
sleep a lot at night, yeah, so I usually try to take a nap at least every other day. So,
good
I
for
gotta
you.
check on my puppies and all that. But, yeah, I think that, I would love to talk to you again, and
We're
I
gonna
think
have
this was
to.
great. I have heard you on, like, Alex's channel and with Jeff, but it's nice to just chat with you and hear some more perspective because
Yeah,
I love to be able to ask you questions
yeah,
about like what you think, because I've heard so much of
thought
the
process.
Scientological, facts and all that, but to really like delve into it and say, what were you thinking? Or what about this? What does that mean? Because when you're just when you're in the chat, it's like
It's
you're hearing
different.
2 Scientologists talk together, sometimes
Yeah,
I get lost and I wish I could ask a bunch of questions. So, I love
yes.
being
Well,
able to ask.
yeah, anytime. I'm an open book pretty much. And for me it's therapeutic to talk about it, and then I start to think of other
Yeah,
things, and again, it's the onion peeling, and
totally.
it's super therapeutic for me too. So by all means, anytime, Marilyn, I love speaking with you. You're a
All right.
wonderful, wonderful, gentle soul,
Oh, you're a
and a
sweetheart. I
little
love talking to you
rebel
too.
on the side.
A little what?
A little rebel on the side.
Yes, we both I think we have that in common. I love that.
Sprinkle.
Just a sprinkle.
It's
Just
just a
a little.
sprinkle of rebel. Love it.
All
Anyway,
right.
sweetie, okay. Let's catch up at another time. And thanks everybody
All
for
right.
watching and
Yes, thank
listening
you,
and,
everyone.
showing some interest. I love it. I also subscribe to me. You can
Yes,
also buy me a
please.
coffee. I know
Escaping
Marilyn
the
has
Cultiverse.
merch.
Oh, yes.
Support Marilyn.
Yes,
Let's
thank you,
support us. We
everyone.
love it.
Yes, thank you, everybody, and yes, please
Okay.
subscribe to Escaping the Cultiverse, eh? I love it.
Yeah. And Marilyn's coffee cults and crafts.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
All right, everyone.
Take care,
We'll see you
everyone.
soon. Have
Bye.
a great day. Bye.
You too. Bye.